Welcome to the episode.
Here we are again. I am your co-host, David.
I am your actual host, Madeline.
I still love how into hierarchy you are.
I'm just saying, one of us is taking the other on a journey,
Yes.
and both of us are taking the audience on a journey.
And the audience's journey is, why does David keep talking?
No, you need that. You need somebody to inquire when things aren't clear. You need someone to be the audience stand-in. That's the whole point of having it, right?
Well, the audience is apparently petulant and kind of a heel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You think so? That's you?
that's just me.
That's you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in
Here we
terms
are.
of petulant heels, which actually kind of sounds like it would be like some sort of, like maybe like a band in New York in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, I was thinking,
Petulant heel.
that sounds, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like a band that you would find on like one of the Bloodstains compilations. Like Bloodstains Across California, Bloodstains Across the Midwest,
Yes.
where it's like weird DIY, like kind of punk from like the 70s, early 80s.
No, this is what I was thinking. I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
a no wave. Like it sounds like it'd be like maybe a no wave band.
Yeah, there's like I still really love the band Vomit Pigs, which is I think on one of those comps.
Yeah,
Which is like you think they're gonna be like a Gigi Allen Dictators thing, but then they're just like really cute, sweet paw.
There's this one song I liked a lot called Sexual Milkshake. Oh no. It was the band. It was a band called Sexual Milkshake. I remember I really liked this band, and I think their song was called California. I
Okay.
think that was it, but that was the weirdest band name I liked.
I feel like Petulant Heels sounds like a band that would be on like Slumberland, but like not early 90s Slumberland, early 2000s Slumberland.
Really? You think
Yeah,
so?
I think
Okay.
they would be with like Brilliant Colors and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Cause Commotion, all those
I don't
bands.
know Cause Commotion.
The Shout Out Louds.
Yes, totally. You're making a playlist.
Of music that I didn't like. I actually did like Brilliant Colors.
Mhm.
Also, where we were.
Okay.
Where have we come?
All right, everybody. If you're here with us today on this journey, you know this is part 4 of a multi-part episode deep dive on the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit slow.
We are just the North Korean podcast. I have been telling Madeline that we should just change. We don't have a theme song,
Currently, we do not. That's
and presumably the national anthem of the DPRK is in the public domain.
probably.
I
I would guess yes.
think we just do that.
You think that's it? You think that's what we need to do here?
Though I would really like it to be like extended rave remix.
We could ask my partner for that. I think.
Yes.
I think we could ask my partner for that. That would be very, very interesting to me. Yeah. I mean, look, the thing about this is it is going to be long. It's going to be the longest one. I'm looking right now through our records to see if anything has been longer. Nothing has been longer.
I think we did like 4 on Bienio Rosso.
We've done 4 on Ukraine.
Yeah.
We've done 4 on Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
We've done. That might be it. Honestly, this might be the biggest one. This is by far going to be the biggest one.
Yeah. This is. I don't think we're getting out under 6.
I definitely don't think we're getting out of 6, considering the last episode was 1 year in the story, 1946.
We really do got to start picking and choosing, but okay.
Okay.
But so where we were was that the 38th parallel has been set up.
Yes.
In the South, in spite of widespread identification with an anti-colonial and potentially socialist orientation.
Yeah, I would say definitely socialist.
But like with some like third worldist style nationalism mixed in.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yep.
like we are in the post-war period. We
Yep.
are a few years out from Bandung. Like these things are all in a mix.
Yep.
The U.S. government, the U.S. military government in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get the?
You did. Sometimes it's called the USA MGIK. Sometimes it's called the US MGIK.
Okay. Has essentially set up a puppet government under Syngman Rhee.
Mm-hmm.
An old man married to an Austrian woman.
Yes.
Also very Catholic. Whom nobody knows. and has resorted to like a widespread, essentially terror campaign against the people of South Korea in order to repress political opposition. And the North, they are holding elections. They are being kind of corny about it with their like large posters, paintings of Stalin and Kim Il-sung, and forming workers' councils. Membership in the Communist Party of North Korea is very high, or the Workers' Party is what it's called. Yes. But there are other parties.
Yep.
There's presumably some sort of Christian Democrat party going on. And land reform is underway.
This happened, and people are stoked on it.
People are stoked on it. Even the landlords are like, I guess we now have to work. That fucking blows. However, we didn't get everything taken from us.
Yes, this is exactly it. So in the North, they're really showing that here with this juxtaposition, we're showing that the people are really in control of their own government. Contrary to what a lot of people think, right? This isn't the USSR showing up and pulling the strings. The USSR doesn't have the will or the wherewithal to do that. So in the North, the people are building for the first time a government, you know, that works for them along their terms. Fork. Hey. Come on.
Leave it in.
You want to leave it in?
Leave it in.
Okay, we're leaving it in. Fork is barking at the cat. So they're building this for like the first time in a way that really reflects what they want, right? In the South, meanwhile, the people are the victims of brutal repression.
Yeah.
Harsh crackdowns. They're getting shot at. They're getting locked up in prison. They're getting tortured. It's very, very hard in the South. So 1947 is where we're going to pick up today. Now, this year in the North, a secret report by Pak Il-yu of the Department of Peace Preservation showed that political cases were very important. So Pak was admonishing province chiefs that, quote, their struggle against profiteers and evil capitalists was quite weak. So they were also termed political criminals. So in the North, their biggest challenge is they're like, we got to really crack down on the bad guys, on the profiteers, on the capitalists who've been exploiting us. They said that the chiefs should be sure to examine the class background and the thoughts of the neighborhood leaders in their jurisdiction, bring problem cases to the attention of the people's committees. They said the class enemy was not to be given rights under the system, and that was their biggest concern. So their biggest concern is, hey, there were some people who were keen to exploit us during the Japanese occupation, and we got to hunt them down. We got to find them. And also said that sometimes the policemen were, you know, not exactly acting on best behavior. So we have documentation where he said, everyone has an appetite for food and loves the opposite sex. But this is something that the patriot conquers. Debauchery, indolence are just for the benefit of oneself and are in opposition to patriotic.
So it is a sex-negative revolution is what I hear.
Yes, they're having a sex-negative revolution.
I'm no longer sex positive.
David's sex negative.
I'm sex negative.
Sex negative.
I think our culture has become decadent.
Oh, like a bourgeois decadence of,
Yes.
of just sex and sin.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I'm going back to like the 1920s American communists where it's like, have you ever thought about going to the gym and having good morals?
Yeah, there was a lot of literature published around that time that was really into getting super clean.
Mm-hmm.
It was very weird.
It's like, you should wash your face more often.
Yeah.
For the revolution.
Yes, it was like, hygiene, comrades, hygiene. I'm like, was everybody really just stank ass walking around, or was this maybe something else? I was always very.
I think it's like, right, like it's the Boy Scouts are starting around that time.
Mhm.
I think the world just generally, in like across every political stripe, was just like, hey, what if we all took showers?
Yeah.
Like it was like the first time it had occurred to anyone, and people were like, what if we all took showers? And also that Charles Atlas guy seems really cool. We should do what he's doing.
Who's Charles Atlas?
He was like a really early bodybuilder.
Oh
guy.
yes.
Yeah.
He
lifted. He might have ripped phone books. You might have
Yes.
know those guys.
Totally. Okay, well, in the DPRK, they were not super obsessed with taking showers at this point. But you can really see in this, this highlights where their head is at with what their biggest challenges are in the North. Their biggest challenge is that the police officers are eating good food, they're having casual sex, they're promiscuous. Yeah, we got to be more disciplined in here, and we really got to crack down on some of these capitalists. So what they were focusing on in the North during 1947 with their police was to get rid of what they called the old attitudes of, quote, high-handedness, arrogance, selfishness, and self-aggrandizement. So they were like, our new police force that we're building here has to respect human rights. And they said beatings, torture, and inhumane evils were not to be used under any circumstances. So the model that they were setting up for their policing in the North was that policemen should be models of respect for the law as a guide to the people. And they wanted their policemen to really have these good virtues. They needed to be able to serve people. They wanted what they called mutual comradely love for the people. But they also wanted to make sure that they didn't have a lot of unclean things in their life because they needed to be disciplined, right? And they also needed to be resourceful and willing to face hardship. So they were really trying to cut out any elements of excess in leadership. And I think this quote's really interesting because, well, first of all, it's going to serve a harsh juxtaposition for what the South was looking for in Poland.
They were like, we want to fuck everything.
Well, no, what they wanted in the South is they were like, we want you to be absolutely fucking psychotic and unhinged. You got to be ready to be a bloodthirsty maniac and kill civilians.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really, really, really bad. So I like this juxtaposition of what's going on in the North and the South because it's so like stark with the contrast between the two. And it also shows that the primary cares that they had in the North going on at this time were not of survival or were not of oppression. Mm-hmm. They were like, we can build the society we want. It also stands in stark contrast to how the West today thinks about policing and law in North Korea. Mm-hmm. We think that everybody's arrested all the time and oppressed, and they live in these torture camps with 3 generations of people being harmed.
Well, they eat rats.
They eat rats, of course, and they push trains.
Yeah. Oh, I think I want to go see. This is off topic. I want to go see Falun Gong.
Oh, I would actually.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do it.
I want to go. I want to go. Right, yes. So yeah, but like what we're really getting here is this idea that like this has never been what the DPRK is about. The vilification of North Korea compared to the reality of North Korea is honestly astounding. They are here trying to develop police that are going to serve the people. They were like, if our police don't serve the people, this cannot be called a people state. Security personnel have to defend the people and fight against the enemy. The enemy at this time to them were traitors and people who had been pro-Japanese because the Japanese people had so brutally oppressed them.
So traitors.
Traitors.
Traitors and traitors.
Traitors and traitors, exactly.
Yes.
So this is really setting the tone for what we're going to experience in 1947. The idea of policing is going to be a recurring theme throughout this year. Mm-hmm. Now, in January, Kim Il-sung sent Korean volunteers to fight alongside Mao in China's revolution. So already they were like, we're doing okay, we're stable, we're going to help other people's communist revolutions basically happen.
And this is like Mao is fighting the nationalists at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
On January 24th, the North Korean government announced a law to eradicate any remnants left over of feudal practices, and 4 articles of this all dealt with what they had called feudal marriage practices, which ended up being a massive win for women's rights in North Korea. Mm-hmm. So Article 1 outlawed dowry exchanges. So they would stipulate up to a year of forced labor for anyone who gave money, animals, valuables, or work to the parents or relatives of either party of marriage. They also had Article 2, which upheld the principle of free choice in marriage and provided up to 2 years in prison for anybody who forced a woman into marriage against her will or forced a woman to stay in a marriage she didn't want to be in anymore.
Mm-hmm. This is, I think in last episode, we divorce is actually weighted towards women at this point because the sort of common practice of like divorcing an older woman in order to marry young.
Yes, they were like, we want to discourage that. Yeah. We should not do that anymore. Article 3 outlawed the practice of child marriage. Article 4 outlawed polygamy and stipulated a fine of up to $50 at the time or $500 today in U.S. money. And a lot of these had been included in the gender equality law that was passed 6 months prior, like in July of 1946. But, people were really still not fully adapting to this new, gender equality kind of thing that the North Korean people were trying to do. So they came down again and they were like, hey, just a reminder, we're serious about this. You guys can't be doing this stuff anymore. We are now, an egalitarian worker government. We're a people's state. And I just thought this was a very, very interesting thing. Now, there's also a Susie Kim book in which she talks about some of this stuff. Do you know this book that she wrote all about like women?
No.
Yeah, so I don't have anything from this book probably in this episode, but the book is really, really interesting. I do recommend it for people. It is called Among Women Across Worlds, North Korea in the Global Cold War.
Oh.
And it's just a book all about women, basically women in North Korea. It's very, very interesting. So I'll probably reference this in some later kind of episodes in the series. But great book if you want to learn more about what was going on with women in North Korea. So the following month, February 1947, well, all of this was going on in the North, and they were like, we're trying to make women more equal. Hey, our police officers really need to serve the people and be more disciplined. The opposite, basically, of this is what's going on in the South, and in particular on Jeju Island.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeju Island in South Korea is what it sounds like. It's an island, and it had been considered really a hotbed of political organizing. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of communists on Jeju Island, and they were fighting back against the American occupation of their territory. So students in Jeju got together to oppose the distribution of U.S. food imports. These had been offered as a stopgap measure to address basically all of the failures of the U.S. occupation in managing resources, including agricultural items. But they got together to be like, we don't want you managing any of this. Mm-hmm. We want you out of our country. And this resulted in the organizers getting blacklisted and put on a list, actually like a physical list, to later be killed by the state in Jeju. But that hasn't happened yet. They're just starting. So the people are trying to be like, we're organizing this. Like, no. And the South Korean government it's still actually under the United States, but they're transitioning into the Syngman Rhee government. It's like, we're taking notes of who you people are, and we will take this as far as we need to. So in the North, they've got an elected Congress taking place, right? Start comparison again. And Susie Kim explains this process, and I think it's really interesting, and we'll hear it because a lot of people are confused by the GPRQ's electoral system. So she says over the course of 4 days, beginning on February 17th, 1947, 1,158 representatives from the provincial, city, and county PCs met for a Congress to elect a 237-member North Korean People's Assembly from among them. So out of the almost 1,200 people, they'd come together and they'd elect a little over 200 of them to go represent them in an assembly. And this is a standard Marxist-Leninist delegate model of elections. This is kind of how it goes. You vote for somebody to represent you, they get together with everybody else, and then they vote for somebody amongst them to represent them, and it goes all the way up to the...
It's a Russian nesting doll of
delegates.
Of delegates.
Yes.
Eventually, those people vote for 100 people,
yes.
And then those people vote for 50 people, and then those people vote for 25 people.
Exactly.
And it goes on and on until you have a foot that is a disembodied foot.
Yes,
that
it's just the best part of the best person's body. Yes. Well, they were just going up to 237,
okay.
not one person and their foot. So 86% voted in favor of an entire slate of candidates they nominated altogether between themselves. So these People's Committee representatives at the Congress and the Central Committee of the North Korean Democratic National United Front, they are the ones who had the right to nominate these candidates. And the way they did it is this. A ballot with all of the names of the nominees would be distributed to each of the representatives at the Congress. They could also write in additional nominees, cross off anyone not to their liking, and just leave alone anybody that they supported. And this was, again, a secret vote, and it was guaranteed by collecting ballots in a box before proceeding to the count. And the candidates with the largest numbers of votes to fill the first 237 seats were declared the winners. The number of seats in the assembly was determined because they allocated one seat for every 5 Congress representatives. And the People's Assembly had a lot of different people that were in it. It actually did include some merchants and entrepreneurs, and some clergy members even. Also some intellectuals. These people... were usually cast out of other socialist revolutions. But in the North, they were like, you know what? We're new. We didn't have to fight these people for our revolution. We just had to fight Japanese collaborators. So as long as you didn't collaborate with the enemy, it's fine.
I always love how, especially in Marxist Leninist texts more than just Marx and Engels type stuff, intellectual is a separate position. Where I'm who is that?
I think it's you.
Oh.
I think you're the intellectual referenced.
Oh, so I don't get killed in North Korea.
Maybe China?
Maybe China.
But not North Korea.
I still think I'd do okay in the Cultural Revolution.
Do you really think so?
I think I'd do.
Today I was positing what the different leaders throughout communist history would think of me personally. And here's what I came up with, just as a brief interjection.
Okay.
I think Stalin would really fuck with me. There's a certain type of man like Stalin that finds me bizarrely amusing and likes me.
No, yeah, but like it's not like I identify with you. It's just like, oh, you're a fucking freak.
Like I'm a spectacle, but like, they respect me.
Like, but yeah, it's like there is like it's not condescension, but I'm looking for
amusement.
It's amusement that like borders on condescension a little.
But I think Stalin would really like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd vibe. I think that Mao would not like me at all until we worked on a project together, and then Mao would see that I had like wild work ethic. And then would be like, never mind, you're good.
Yeah, but
me as a person up until then, would hate me.
And I think like trying to get you into like the Chinese blues uniform, that would be tough on you.
That would be really, really hard. Yeah. But if once he saw me get to a project, he'd be like, not only do I understand this creature, I appreciate it, give it more work.
I like in this instance, you are a creature no matter what.
Yeah, I don't think he's really seeing me as like a human.
None of these people.
No.
I remember there was like I think it was like a BBC podcast where they asked a bunch of like contemporary philosophers what philosopher from history they would actually like to meet. And Martha Nussbaum said John Stuart Mill. If you know anything about Martha Nussbaum's work, very far from John Stuart Mill. But she was like, I think that John Stuart Mill is probably the only one from the history of philosophy that would be okay meeting me as a woman.
Right. Right. Well, I had this whole thought. I mean, I did the whole thing. I think that Castro would kind of like me the same way Stalin kind of liked me.
I think Castro would fuck with you actually pretty hard. And like in a way that would be like more on the level than Stalin.
Yes. Che would not notice I existed because he would be scanning the room for pretty girls.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, not that one. That one's weird. I think that would be...
I don't know. I mean, you could...
You think I could pull Che?
I think you could pull Che.
Thank you. That's really nice. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
It would be a brief romance.
Yes, I think so. I think it's fair. Okay, but anyway, so...
Wait, okay. You missed the biggie.
What?
What was it? Lenin?
Oh, Lenin...
Hate you.
I don't think Lenin would hate me.
I think Lenin would absolutely hate you.
I think this. I think that... I don't think Lenin would hate me. I think Lenin would not have any situation where I would be in the same room as him.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like, not serious.
But if he did...
Yeah.
He would be like, what the fuck is this? Guys.
I don't know, actually. Maybe. I have some complicated thoughts on Lenin. It depends on how annoyed he was with Trotsky. Trotsky would hate me.
Trotsky would hate you.
Trotsky and I would literally try to murder each other.
Even Trotsky and like before his like heel turn.
He would still fucking hate
He would still like when Trotsky like, because Trotsky had a heel turn. I think we can all agree on that.
Well, yeah, when he started being like, actually, if you think about it, I did the Russian Revolution. And everyone was like, what?
But like, I do like there was a point in which Trotsky was like more or less essential to the organization.
Yes.
Of like I think that's like
he would still hate me during that.
He would. All right, who? Any of these guys liking me? None of them.
Yeah. Yes. Lenin would like you. Trotsky would like you too.
Good Trotsky, bad Trotsky.
Good Trotsky, bad Trotsky would not like you.
Yeah.
But Lenin would like you. Mm-hmm. And Castro, I think, would like you.
Yeah, I feel like Castro seems like he liked everyone. Like this is like this is kind of like
thing. He's folksy. He's folksy.
He's like a
yeah.
He is you know what the queen of the virtues is?
Huh? Oh no.
Magnanimity.
Oh okay, yeah.
Castro is a magnanimous man.
He's magnanimous. I do think to bring it back, Kim Il Sung might like you. Kim Il Sung would not like me. Not serious enough.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the second I said something like, we have to update this, I like got in the weeds about something, all of these people would be like, we're fucking done.
You think so? No,
Trotsky
would love it and Lenin would entertain it. Okay, all right.
Okay, Kim Il Sung.
Back to this. All right. So, contrary to what people think about the politics going on at this time, Kim Il Sung is not actually the highest body of power in the DPRK. The role he's in at this time is the premier, which is a role today. Do you know who holds that role today?
This is not Kim Jong-un.
Correct.
This is some other guy who I believe you have made reference to. But
yes.
To be honest,
they change kind of every 5 years or whatever, so it's not super essential to know.
North Korea is not my, like,
Right.
intense, monomaniacal special interest.
Okay, I have other interests.
What are they?
Video games.
About North Korea.
I wish.
When you are making the Witch City in Sims,
is it just North Korea?
is it just North Korea?
Well,
I mean, it is kind of like when
I could maybe create that. Yeah, that would be really cool. No, so it's a Manic Pacquiao song. But none of this is the highest organ of power. The highest organ of power is actually the assembly that they're electing right now, because the assembly has the ability to elect and recall the leaders of every kind of department except for the parties, because the parties are not technically part of the government. They're separate.
Yes.
So this is really the most important election going on at this time, and this is still how they do their elections today. So the formation of the People's Assembly really brought in everybody. They did not allow landlords or Japanese collaborators, but everybody else was welcome. And this really goes and speaks to the spirit of the North Korean Revolution and how unique it was. One of the things that's really cool about North Korea is they added in a brush to the hammer and sickle logo. And the brush represents what they call the samwon, which is like a catch-all term. I think it literally means like office worker, office clerk, but it's a catch-all for artists, for intellectuals, for anybody who's not typically represented by the hammer and sickle.
Okay.
Yeah, so they add this in because they're like, we're all-inclusive, babes. Come in.
This is, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because, like, so much of the Marxist tradition is premised off of the notion of productive labor.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it. And, like, right, like, you really do have to stretch the definition of the word productive to include, for example, much of the American working class today.
Yeah.
Because what we would call productive labor accounts for something like 10 to 12% of the American labor force.
Yeah, there's a lot of administrative work, a lot of service kind of stuff.
A lot of admin work, a lot of, like, what I would call the American working class is mostly service work.
Yep, mostly service work.
And so that, I mean, like, it does change how you think about, like, the sort of theory of Marxism a little bit. If that makes any sense.
No, it definitely does. But I think that it is a welcome change, right? I think that in keeping up with how labor developed, especially like technology and how it affects labor, I think it's the natural extension of like the process of technology. Of course, you're going to have more administrators because you're going to have more machines doing work that historically machines.
Well, I mean, but like, I think, right, what his general, like, and Marx said, like, administrative labor, all of that stuff is essentially surplus labor that has been, like, moved.
Yes.
Right. And Marx thinks that, like, the, like, large reserve army of surplus labor is, like, both a threat to, like, existing productive labor. In any case, we're getting into this. Why they would all fucking hate me. Go on.
No, I don't think so, though. I mean, it is interesting. I don't think of administrative labor as moved surplus labor. I just don't think it is.
I mean, I always think, like, if you have, like, a fucking email job.
Yeah.
That's not.
I think it is, depending on what you're emailing and administering. These people are project managers. I think all this stuff is actually more. I think people think that who've never had those jobs.
Yeah.
But there are people who have those jobs where it's like this whole project would fall apart.
Yeah.
If somebody wasn't organizing it.
No, I mean, I think that, like, the question then becomes, like, where in labor do they fall? Right. Are they administrators on the side of capital, for example?
But it doesn't matter. They're like, everybody come in, administer the worker revolution.
So they add the goddamn brush.
So they add the brush. They're like, if you're a merchant, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a clergy, if you're an intellectual, you're the kind of person who usually is not included in other socialist revolutions. We don't care. Come in. As long as you're not a landlord and you didn't fuck with Japan, you're one of us. You're a worker. You're just a different kind of worker, and we're going to find a place for you in the new version of this worker state we're building, right?
Yeah.
So the People's Assembly gets made as the supreme legislative body, and it gives the assembly the authority to elect the chair of the North Korean People's Committee, the highest executive body, which reorganized and added more departments to the previous 13 under the PPC, the People's Committees that came before. The publicity department was changed to the Culture and Publicity Department, and 5 new departments were added: National Audit, Internal Affairs, Foreign Affairs, Labor, and City Management. Now, 1947. American intelligence starts paying extra attention to not only what's going on in North Korea, but what's going on with North Korea and China. So Cummings writes of this time period and says, North Korean military forces had expanded rapidly in late 1946 within Korea, preparing for a spring offensive in Manchuria. Some 30,000 Koreans under the command of Kim Chaek reportedly moved into Manchuria during April of 1947, by which time 15 to 20% of the Chinese Communist forces in the Manchuria area were Koreans. From that point onward until the winter of 1950, American intelligence designated these soldiers as Chinese Communist Forces, or CCF Koreans, something that made it hard to identify who was actually a Chinese soldier when they entered the Korean War. So the United States is watching this happen, and they're thinking a couple things. They're like, all right, we got maybe some communism happening in China. That's going to be fucked. We got to deal with that. But also, the people in North Korea are building a large military. And they're like, uh-oh.
And it's like so it seems like what's happening is in Manchuria, the Chinese and Korean forces are like, we don't really like differentiating by nationality, really not a priority for us here.
Right. And they've always had a porous border.
Yeah.
They're just like, whatever. We're fighting the same enemies.
And as a consequence of which, like, I don't know if they had articulated the domino theory yet as a thing.
I don't know when they actually let's look that up. I feel like 1948.
Okay. So they're like, we are gonna.
Oh, 1954. It was later.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
But they're like, we are seeing the slow spread, the quite rapid spread of communism across Asia.
And this was a little scary. And they're also like, what's it going to mean for us if North Korea builds up a strong military?
Like it will make it much harder. Like maybe they will reunite the country.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So the reason why reunification could not happen, according to the Americans, is that if this country reunified, the whole thing was going to go communist. So the Americans had thought that they would be able to stamp out communism in the southern half of Korea. But so far, this has not been an easy task. Remember, the Korean people are like death before dishonor. Like, we will die before we are subjugated to you, American pigs.
I mean, to be clear, America was successful.
Ultimately, yes. Today,
right. They it is the South Korean government was like a right-wing dictatorship for like a crazy amount of time.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. And today they're huge proponents of Israel. Everyday people there, they are extremely right-wing. I mean, you think about like all the media that's come out of South Korea, Parasite, right? Or Squid Game, it's all critiques of capitalism.
Yeah, but it is all like, right. All of American media is also a critique of capitalism, if you think about it. Like,
I mean, there's, you don't have to think about it. It's pretty overt. They're like, and remember, South Korea has the highest suicide rate out of all the OECD countries in the world. And also they have the 4B movement. Women there are so repulsed by patriarchy, they don't even want to date men anymore. Yeah. So they're like, if the United States is an aggressive advanced form of capitalism, South Korea is the same but worse, maybe.
I mean, I guess here's what off the top of my head, the movie Hook.
Yes.
Why are you working so much, Robin Williams? Why not go to a wonderland in which you all get in food fights and resist hierarchical power of the pirate capitalist class?
Okay, so are you saying that the mythical, wonderful land in Hook is North Korea?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Robin Williams Syngman Rhee?
No, Robin Williams is a late convert.
Okay.
So he forgot his earlier. It's like
communist roots.
It's like primitive communism.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Like
we call it indigenous communism. It's
I'm
just saying, okay? But yes.
Okay.
Continue.
Right. Primitive in the sense of like primary. And Rufio is their Lenin.
Okay, Kim Il-sung.
Rufio is Kim Il-sung.
Yes, I can see this actually. He's a brave young fighter.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, that is
impetuous and bold. And Hook is
Syngman Rhee
is a decadent, neurotic. He's hot. He's neurotic. A despot.
Yes.
Who thinks of nothing but time. Obviously, since Dickens, one of the principal representations of capitalism.
Yes.
Hard times, as we all know. But you can do this with any American media.
Yeah.
All American media is fundamentally like a critique of capitalism because it's like the thing that we're always thinking.
Okay.
Every Hallmark movie where it's like, I go to a small town.
I'm just saying, these are way more. They're like, literally, it's killing me. I'm about to die this minute.
Yes.
See, there's a little more heavy-handed.
What is The Wolf of Wall Street, if not?
That one, he still wins in the end.
Yeah, but it's like
capitalism is fun.
It's a Pyrrhic victory that shows the basic amorality of capitalism.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, anyway.
Whatever the case. So the whole reason this is happening, right, is that the United States is still not ready to have a reunifying election, obviously, because they have not been able to stamp out communism in South Korea. They have not. And as evidence of this, in March of 1947, a leader of the Korean People's Republic in Seoul, Yo Eun-hyung, has his home destroyed by a grenade.
Mm-hmm.
So this tells us, the documentation of this tells us that people in South Korea are still fighting back. They're like, absolutely not. Now, on Jeju Island, on March 1st, protests erupt against major political and economic policies that the U.S. government has imposed there. The members of the People's Committee in Jeju, along with the Jeju chapter of the South Korean Labor Party, organized a rally. And the South Korean Labor Party is the SKLP. Now remember, these are communists. Leadership was educated, very developed, very effective at organizing. And the rally slogans that they were calling for were the following. These are direct quotes. Support the establishment of a democratic provisional government. They want to get the United States out of there. They want their own government, right? Hand back power to the people's committees, right? The same things that have become the functioning government of North Korea that they're trying to stamp out in the South. They're like, give us back our power. Abolish all administrative bodies from the Japanese era. Remember, the United States has showed up and just been like, yeah, we're keeping those.
There was the quote from last week about like the Americans occupying the same physical spaces and architecture as the Japanese government.
Yep.
Where it's like one day there was a Japanese guard, the next day there was an American or something to that effect.
Yep, exactly. And the last one is unique to something that was happening in Jeju. Cholera had hit the island in 1946. Residents were dealing with crop failure. And this is when they had originally gotten into the fight with the Americans about the food, where they're like, you're not administering food right. So what their call for this is let the people solve the problems of food shortages by themselves. Because they're like, you're not capable of doing it. So approximately 25 to 30,000 people gathered at the Jeju-buk Elementary School. And after the rally, a parade occurred. While the parade is going on, the march, right, a small child gets kicked by a mounted police officer's horse. Onlookers see this, and they swarm the officer, who they do not feel is sufficiently, contrite about this, basically. And they follow him to the police station. At the police station, the police fire into the crowd, and they kill 6 civilians, including a student from the elementary school and a mother who was holding her baby. So this is the kickoff of a bad situation getting worse. Now, on March 10th, 9 days later, the people of Jeju Island stage a general strike. Now, we have some quotes about the general strike here that we're going to read. And this, I believe, is from Guisup Guan's book. All the sources are going to be listed in the notes. Is Guisup Guan, I believe, who writes extensively about Jeju Island. The depth of the strike, starting on March 10th, was unprecedented in Korean history. Not only students, teachers, and factory workers, but also public officials and even some native policemen participated. Public officials in the Jeju Provincial Office joined the strike, and those in other provincial public offices, including radio stations and tax offices, participated in the strike shortly after. Additionally, Jeju native police officers participated in the strike, and as a result, 66 policemen were later dismissed. In some 166 organizations and institutions joined the general strike, and the total number of participants was 41,211, a remarkable number given Jeju's modest population. The remnants of the local PCs played a substantial role in coordinating these and other activities, the PCs obviously being people's committees. For example, the fundraising campaign for the victims' families were actively conducted by the leadership of PCs in counties and towns that still existed at the time. As historian Hwang Soo-kyung notes, the rally on March 1st and the general strike intensified the radical attitude among Jeju people against the police and rightist groups on the island. So they have this general strike, they talk about how it's administered, and this just makes them hate the Americans even. This led to the U.S. government labeling Jeju as an island dominated by communists, making them officially a target of their far-right practices.
There's going to be a massacre on Jeju Island, isn't there?
There is a genocide on
Yes.
Jeju Island that occurs. Yes. The military government proposes a policy of eradicating anyone with left-wing politics on the island. So the chief of the Korean National Police and a key member of the Korean Democratic Party, hand-selected as a former Japanese collaborator and now American collaborator, his name was Cho Byung-ok. He is like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to help figure out who's got left-wing politics on the island, and we're going to get rid of it.
But that's everyone.
But everyone. It is everyone, exactly. So on March 14th, Cho gives a speech, and he says to the people of the island, I can wipe out the entire population of Jeju. And he makes this statement on March 14th, 1947, to the people of Jeju. I, the chief of Korean National Police, have come to Jeju with a deep concern, reported that many administrative branches were paralyzed upon an unfortunate incident on March 1st. I've come with an infallible measure to protect your compatriots' lives and properties. Also, the fundamental plan to eradicate the elements rendering Jeju fallen into the deceitful propaganda and destructive disorder has been prepared. There is nothing other than rioting that jeopardizes the prospect of nation building. Frequent riots only expose our nation's lacking credibility for political and moral autonomy to the eyes and ears of the international community. Dear compatriots, reconsider your conduct and devote yourselves to daily routine to contribute to the nation-building mission. So basically, what does he say? He says, oh my God, if you want us to be free, you need to show the Americans how good you can be. Otherwise, I'm going to kill you.
I mean, it kind of sounds like, I'm going to kill you.
Do not resist.
Do not resist. It seems to be like essentially the point here.
So this is now when assessed by scholars, and this whole period has been deeply assessed by scholars now, because they're like, oh, we're uncovering more about this. This is recent that we even discovered this happened, because after, spoiler alert, a genocide occurs on Jeju Island, the bodies were hidden under a plot of land that later broke ground to make an airport, and that is when people discovered that this happened.
Okay.
So this is semi-recent that people are going back.
When was the airport?
Let me see really fast. I can look at the exact number. So between 2007 and 2009 is when it really started to get uncovered.
Okay.
So this was, now people are going back and figuring this out, and they're piecing everything together. And people are saying that this is necropolitics, necropower, right?
Oh, who wrote that fucking essay? In any case, I can't remember. It's a guy with an African name. Fuck.
Achille Mbembe.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great essay.
So this is why academics are saying that this classifies as necropolitics. So there are 4 categories for this. Categories of necropower: invoking the presence of an enemy, the maximal and proactive production of mass deaths, the discipline of the population into living dead figures adhering to the powerful, and entanglement with colonialism and imperialism.
So, if I recall correctly, the Mbembe essay is supposed to contrast this with Foucault's biopolitics, right? Which is like, what is the definition? To make live and choose who dies or whatever. So it's like essentially like the sort of administrative bureaucratic optimization of life and choosing who gets access to that under the state. And the necropolitics, when I read the essay, I was like, is that not just despotism and genocide? Is that not what we are, which is like choosing who dies?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, and that's exactly what they end up doing. So this is setting the tone for what's going to happen soon on Jeju. So the following month in April, repression of political enemies gets emboldened in the South. On April 5th, the 2 men received 2 years each in prison for disturbing the general peace. The same day, 2 others received sentences of 2 years, one for another year, for fomenting what they called an illegal strike. And this is starting to just pick up steam and become more and more normalized. Meanwhile, in the North, the already limited amount of attention that the USSR had been paying to them, it just gets less and less present. Susie Kim says in this section, when talking about this in her book, if you expect to hear a lot about the USSR in the story, you will be disappointed because they just weren't really there. And they really just didn't need to be. And Bruce Cummings elaborates on this and says, the number of Soviet advisors was never very high in the North, even in the military. British sources estimated that Soviet advisors to the central government dropped from 200 in 1946 to 30 people by April of 1947.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point...
But they were like really, really efficient people. It was like they 30 Madelyns in North Korea. Right, 30 Soviet Madelyns.
Running around, oppressing everybody.
Just
in
like...
little communist ways.
Talking really fucking fast. Like, so they were really running everything. Like, can you imagine the 30 of you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
That would fuck up, like,
a
whole state.
The outfits probably would look so good. Very cute outfits.
Ugh.
So...
Yeah.
May rolls around, and Roger Baldwin, who used to be the head of the ACLU, actually goes on a tour of Korea. And South Korea in particular. He says, this country is literally in the grip of a police regime and a private terror. He wrote this to his friends about his trip to the South. He says, you get the general impression of a beaten, discouraged people. He said he saw a prison where 1,000 people were being held just for organizing labor unions and organizing strikes. And he said to his friends, what the Koreans want is, quote, all foreigners to get out and let them build their nation. Mm-hmm. So it's bleak in the South. It's getting really, really fucked. And there's also the second meeting that happens of the Joint Commission, and the United States submits applications for 425 organizations to be consulted in the American zone of Korea regarding reunification. If you had to guess how many of these were left-wing organizations, labor unions, strikes representing the people, how many would you guess?
All of them.
Zero.
All of them. They were all, yeah.
Okay. None included. And the USA was like, 52 million people in South Korea all belong, on average, to 5 different organizations. And so that's where they're all going to be represented, and none of them are left-wing. And USSR is like, I'm sorry, you're telling me 52 million people in your half of Korea are all working jobs and also have 5 different organizations they're a part of? What the fuck are you talking about? And the United States is like, yeah. They're very active people. They're very involved. That's why we got to consult all these right-wing groups. And so...
Well, that is, right, like, that shows this is a representative democracy that depends upon a diversity of viewpoints, obviously.
Well, no. See, they were like, all these people have the same viewpoint, and we have to consult them to show that South Korea is under right-wing leadership longing for a separate right-wing country.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it's just like, different flavors of right-wing.
Different, oh, okay, yeah.
Right, like...
Yeah, they're like, all these people got...
Some are crypto-libertarian, some are...
ANCAPs.
Which is a crypto-libertarian. And some are, like, neocon. What's the thing that they're all like neo-monarchists now, which is crazy.
I've been seeing a lot of people talk about Fangal.
What the fuck?
Hold on. Phalangism,
fascism.
They're fascist, yeah.
Fascism.
Yeah, obviously. These are all fascists, to some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the libertarians, the ANCAPs, don't know that they're fascist.
That's true, actually.
Like, they don't, which is, like, the ANCAP to neo-monarchist pipeline, which is very funny to me, where it's like, actually, the way to have complete liberty is to just have one guy.
Small government.
Really small. That is a lot of power, but like physically very small.
Just
okay, but they're this deeply representative right-wing state that represents the true beliefs of the South Korean people.
Right, and here's what the United States is trying to push, and the USSR is like, I'm sorry, we've been a Korea, you're fucking full of shit. Like, first of all, those people aren't in 5 works each. Second of all, these people aren't conservative. What are you fucking doing? So
well, and it's like, even the communists are conservative. They're like, we don't fuck.
Hey, they just wanted that of the cops.
Yeah.
They were really trying to respect women. That was their big move.
But and like, women don't fuck.
Well, they might have had some collective cultural trauma from what the Japanese did to them. Just saying. Okay. So 2 months after this, July 1947 comes around, and the North is like, you know what we need? not a massacre of our indigenous population. Community centers. So they're like, this is our biggest priority right now.
This is the thing is that, like, this is why conservatives always win, because, like, communists do have, like, the basic outlook of, like, a camp counselor.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Look, they ended up doing a massive literacy campaign involving these community centers.
They are saying, hey guys, why don't you read and do homework?
Yes.
That is what the Communist Party is. Yes. Read and do homework.
Because we want you to participate in the ideology of the country.
And the South is saying, we could all just do murder.
Oh. Yeah. Well, in the North, they teach you how to read. In the South, they teach you how to get killed.
Or maybe to kill.
Or to kill.
To kill.
To kill.
You would participate.
And you have
remember
freedom.
What we learned last week, which is that we're not a cab.
No.
We are.
A cab.
Everyone is cop.
Everyone is cop. That's right. I forgot about this. Yeah, every single person's a cop. So they start this literacy campaign, and it gets facilitated by the retention of election campaign offices as local meeting spaces long after the elections are over, right? So they're like, oh, we have these spaces that we had set up to do the elections. They still exist. Let's use them. And they decided to make them what they called socially productive spaces for everyday life. So these are community centers. And they're like, we're going to use these to launch a massive literacy campaign. So by July of 1947, there were 11,595 of these things all throughout North Korea, which is a lot. And they get renamed Democratic Publicity Halls. Yeah.
I'd just say, like, it does, like, to modern ears, it doesn't sound fun.
It does not sound fun. But I don't think they were trying to fun. I think they were making a very serious revolution.
No, I understand that. But, like, you understand why.
Yeah, I know. It's not a catchy name.
It's not catchy.
No.
And they probably hung the portraits of Stalin and Kim Il-sung on the walls. And
do you think I should get portraits of Stalin and Kim Il-sung for my house? I already have Castro.
The fact that you don't already is shocking to me.
Okay, all right.
So, I was talking to someone recently who was asking me a question about you, and I was like, I mean, Madeline does, in fact, believe that the tank should have been there.
Yeah, that's true about Yeah, this is the one thing Khrushchev did right.
Yeah.
As Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty were there indoctrinating the people of Hungary.
Madeline knows their history very well.
Hungary.
But sometimes a couple wires get crossed.
It's not my fault. Joseph showed up in Hungary.
Joseph, as a ghost.
And Cumin wrote about it.
Yeah.
And, look, sometimes the saying the words out loud is a challenge.
But in any case, so there are there are community centers, and everyone is learning to read. But it's not fun.
It's not fun. Right. Correct. So they come to function basically like cultural centers. They end up elevating the cultural life of the people. They foster communal participation, educational programs. They spread info about important events that are coming up. And they do, yes, get decorated with portraits of Kim Il-sung and Joseph Stalin, but they also have posters. They have news up on the wall. They have graphs showing their progress of things like increasing agricultural production, industrial production, tax collection, and literacy.
I love that you're like, you know what, the really cool thing they had? Graphs.
It was cool. That's cool. I think that's cool.
You are, what's
Hungary
that? Do you remember that Facebook group that was like...
no, I never went on Facebook, please.
Even back in you were on.
I was not on Facebook. I had a Facebook, but I literally never went on it because I was like, this is so ass compared to MySpace and Makeup Club. I hated it.
And Mad Rad
Hair was awesome. Yeah, I know.
Mad Rad Hair forced it. We won't get into it. But no, I'm just saying the transit oriented memes for.
I don't know about this.
This was like this whole group of these weird public transit city planning.
This does sound like something I would have enjoyed.
Or it was urbanism oriented memes for transit oriented teens. I think was what it was called, or some shit like that. This is North Korea is very much on that tip.
Yes, totally. So this is where people in North Korea would start having their local meetings. They would also use them as the classrooms for their literacy campaigns, and they would also be senior centers for the elders of different villages. Some of them would also be equipped with sports equipment, musical instruments, libraries, barbershops, health clinics, and even public bathhouses. So it's just like a place you could go to do everything you needed.
It's a spa.
It's a really fancy spa, yes. So remember, they called them like publicity halls. So the publicity hall at Nambuk Village in Inje County was like considered the model that all of the other ones aspired to. And that one had a workroom, a study room, a barbershop, a bathhouse, an entertainment room. All of the walls were covered with graphs, cartoons, news, announcements. There were over 160 newspapers and books in the library collection. There was a record player. There were board games. And 40 people would gather there minimum every day, and they would play games. They'd work on projects. They would read. And it really came to have this reputation as a place where you would go to get up to date on the news, what was happening with politics around you. And people would go all hours of the day. Women would bring their needlework. Men would bring straw, and they would make straw shoes while they were there. That was like a thing that people made in North Korea.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Okay.
And they would also like organize talks there, discussions, and get people to engage in politics. Like, let's talk about this issue affecting us. What do you guys think? And like really get people trained.
What I'm hearing is they were nerds.
Yeah, they were fucking nerds. They were making shoes and doing needlepoint talking about graphs.
Nerd shit.
So cool. It was so cool. Hungary could never. So they really were tackling literacy for women as well. In 1945, 90% of women in Korea were illiterate. So they ended up, around this time, 1947, getting everybody involved in a 4-month reading program. And they established, similar to Cuba, these teams to eradicate illiteracy in every single village. And this was really, really effective.
So you're telling me that they wanted to eradicate illiterates?
Yes, they wanted to get rid of the illiterates. They wanted to kill them with words, with reading.
Bore them to death.
They wanted to make them read to life, David. So kids also would have camping trips with the like youth arm of the Workers' Party, like the kids' parties, and that's where they would learn more about nature. And one of the main goals that they stated with the kids on this camping trip was to show that liberalism and individualism are obstacles to collective life. So, like, you need each other to survive. We're on these camping trips in nature. How are we going to survive? We need each other. Mm-hmm. So they started trying to make this, like, a part of, like, a public understanding of, like, what they were doing all together and who. So the South, on the flip side, while this was going on, Mad Max, just like Thunderdome, like everybody's screaming, people are killing each other.
Okay, but again, I just really want to emphasize, like, which movie would you rather see, Mad Max or a camping trip where everyone is happy?
The camping trip where everybody is happy, depending on which Mad Max it is. Is this one of the newer Mad Maxes? The camping trip.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, the new Mad Maxes suck.
You would rather watch the camping trip. Beverly Hills, Troop Beverly Hills. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, or like, what's the Fat Camp movie from the 90s?
Yes.
That's a great movie.
That movie's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I've got a quote here. I'm talking about this, and this, I believe, comes from the R.R. Krishna. See, the problem about it taking so long to do the episodes is I don't remember exactly who I pulled the quotes from, because I screenshotted them from the books, and I was like, I'll remember this based on the text. Mm-hmm. It's been 3 weeks. I don't remember.
I need to start doing it. Like, whenever I do the research, I painstakingly type out every single fucking quote.
Screenshot it.
This is
so easy. It's the way to go. But now I'm like, oh yeah, this looks like it's probably the Krishnan piece, I would guess.
Do you know who said it?
Well, no. I didn't keep it's in our notes somewhere. It's in one of the sources for everybody. Okay, so
but we are opposed to liberalism and individualism.
We have collective sourcing.
The collective effort of the Korean scholar community
exactly has contributed this quotation for us. When Syngman Rhee returned from the consultations in Washington, he assumed active control of the right. With new outbreaks of rightist activity, including physical assaults on Soviet delegates to the Joint Commission meeting in Seoul on July 26th, and unable to reach any agreement as the level of suppression on the left increased, the Soviet delegation left in August. Rhee had reasoned correctly that the United States, in view of its declaration of war on communism, would not set up a provisional government without including the rightists, whom he was now in a position to deny to them. The United States needed Rhee, whether it liked him or not. Because remember what happened here. Rhee kind of went rogue at the end of our last episode. He was like, I don't know about hard. She seems soft on communism. I'm going to go to the United States where all my buddies in the Republican Party just got elected to these like big positions. And I'm going to go around the USMGIK and I'm just going to talk to my guys directly in the US.
And right, like MacArthur is, if I recall correctly, a psychopath.
He is.
Right.
Too soft for Syngman Rhee,
but like at the time is like, fuck this Truman guy.
Yes.
He's not hard enough. Like, we need to get in there. Like, he wants to like drop an atomic bomb at one point. Right. Like, I think this is later when the war really pops off.
Yeah, we got a lot of bad evil dudes in South Korea right now who are trying to out evil dude each other.
Which is like cool.
Again, very bad backs.
I'm just saying, which movie would you rather watch?
I'm telling you, we've already talked about this.
You want to watch that?
Fat Camp one. Yeah, it's great. So the United States is like, well, we did an oopsie because we took Rhee and we put him in front of a bunch of South Korean people. Anybody who was vaguely right-wing politics, we funneled into Rhee. So the only people who would even kind of support us being here now look to Rhee as their guy because we told them to. And now Rhee has a closer relationship with Washington than we do. What? We need him. Oh, fuck. Okay. So in 1947, blanket instructions are issued to arrest all leftists in South Korea.
That's like
all of South Korea.
Well, not all, presumably, but like most.
So they increased their police force to 25,000 people to do this. Although there were only 7,000 political prisoners admittedly held by the military government, most of the leftists were arrested on a variety of other charges, like the illegal distribution of formerly Japanese-owned land to peasants, for example. People's committees
give the land back to the Japanese. Jesus.
That's what the United States is saying. So remember, the People's Committees, and there when they had been in charge of things for a day or continued to operate even though they weren't supposed to, they were redistributing land. So they just got arrested on things like that. So by mid-1947, there were almost 22,000 people in jail, which was nearly twice as many that had been imprisoned in the same area under Japanese rule. So the United States was cracking down even more. And most of the cases that went to trial were tried in the military courts of the military government. And at the same time, the leader of the Korean People's Republic in Seoul, Yo Eun-young, is murdered. They're fighting back. They're like,
yeah.
So in August 1947, the South is getting even more horrifying. Roger Baldwin wrote a description at this time and said, "We hold in prisons thousands of men convicted by American provost courts, which are no courts at all, in a legal sense, for offenses against the occupation. Some such offenses: attending, organizing, or acting as an officer at an unauthorized meeting, uttering speech or words or singing a song hostile to the United States, the armed forces, or the military government, sending a communication detrimental or disrespectful to the United States, or failing to report its receipt, sending an uncensored message or a letter outside of the mails. These are provost court offenses. Penalty for committing them may be 5 years in jail. Most of the prisoners so held are ostensibly leftists. Are they disrespectful of the United States when they strike or hold unauthorized meetings?"
I mean, yes, obviously. Yeah.
The Seoul Press reports that 70% of the prisoners are involved in strike cases. So it's getting really bad. So the United States military is like, they keep rising up against us, just arrest them all. We're arresting everyone.
And presumably, like, we are seeing the continuation of the, like, torture/murder campaign in prison.
And remember, this is a military government. It's a military dictatorship. And this is when, as well, the Jeju Island massacres that now we call genocides begin. So this resulted in the second highest death toll of civilians in Korea's contemporary history, only following the Korean War. Scholars do have started calling this a genocide, yes. We know at least 15,000 people were killed. Historians think the real number could be as high as 30,000 or even more because we just don't, we're still recovering info.
And just for comparison, not that it matters, what was the population of Jeju Island? Here, I'll look.
Look it up. Yeah, look it up.
We're in 1947?
Yeah.
So from Wikipedia, it's about 300,000. So about a tenth of the population.
Yeah, so about a tenth of their population gets killed.
Yeah.
Now, in the North, I will say 20% of the people of North Korea would be killed in the Korean War that follows.
Yeah.
10% of them would be civilians. 10% military, 10% civilians. So this is about the same. We got 10% death rate in the North and the South. at the hands of the Americans. These are massive slaughtering campaigns. But the North isn't there yet, right? The North is still allowed to exist on their own. They're tranquil. They might even be like blossoming at this time, really taking off. A women's journal from August 13th, 1947, publishes an editorial that gives kind of like a glance at what's going on.
A glance.
A glance, if you will. A glance.
That's when your glimpse is glam.
Oh, glams. Yeah. Why are you looking at me like I'm not allowed to make up words? Do you think is it misogyny? Shakespeare did it. Do you think
Did I not just help you define the word that you made up?
You gave me a face. You gave me a face like maybe
that's just what my
made up the word. You were like, oh.
This is the second time in a month. This is the second time in a month that someone has said that I have a weird hostile face, and I can't help that.
Okay, maybe, but if you're not gonna let me make up
I am helping you make up the magic word.
And you're not going to let me call it a glamps.
I am letting you call it a glamps. I think that the definition of glamps should be a glam glimpse.
Okay, all right. So fine. So we get a glamps, okay, into what's going on in North Korea. So this women's journal explains that before liberation, quote, Korean women did not have a life of their own and could not have an independent life as a human being. They lived subjugated under men, a life of domination, always being dragged around. This was the totality of life of past Korean women. So the article goes on, though, to explain that in contrast, now North Korean women had a right to vote, to be elected to public office. They could participate in the full range of public life, including political, economic, and cultural. So this editorial says, the life of a North Korean woman today has been completely freed from subordination, domination, subservience, and exploitation. So she can live a social life of her own, an economic life of her own, for a socially productive life from a position of equality with men. So, you know, you might remember Susie Kim talked about this quote when we did our book club episode about it and was like, is this propaganda? Yeah, it's a little bit of propaganda. I mean, they're not fully there yet, but it shows that this is their intentions, and it is still massive progress from where they were before, right? It's not like they solved the woman question overnight or whatever, but still, this is where their priorities lie. The following month, in September of 1947, the clashes on Jeju Island continue, and it really is the police there versus the public. But it is also exacerbated by right-wing youth associations who start attacking leftists on Jeju Island as well. And these youth associations, we'll hear more about them later, but they're pretty wild. Like, if you think about the Cultural Revolution and you think about the young people who were recruited into it, right, to be like under Mao, think about that, but like fascist, like Hitler Youth style.
Yeah, I mean, I think that seems like you do actually need like a phalangist move. Like, you need people who are like, we fucking love this. We are going to do murder.
Yes, exactly. And that's what they got out of these youth organizations. Something I do think is interesting is that young people often engage in counter-revolutionary behavior before older people will in places that have had a worker revolution.
I mean, I do think that, like, youth as a right-wing reactionary thing is a very, very common fucking thing. It's why I hate the children.
Yeah, no, it can't. It's true. It's totally
like, I have persistently said that it's not just me growing older.
You think they're getting worse.
And losing touch.
You do think they're getting worse?
I always think they're getting worse.
I think they're getting more polarized is what data is showing. So there's a lot more socialists and communists in Gen Z, but...
Yeah, but the socialists and communists all think that you're a LaSalleist or some shit.
Yeah. They don't know what it is.
So they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
They'll get there. So November 1947, General Albert Weidemeyer goes on tour of Korea. And this is him. He is a U.S. Army general.
What is this caricature of him?
Well, is this him being on the cover of Time magazine, but maybe also it's embroidered?
That's embroidered? This
is embroidered, and this is...
He looks like Jimmy Stewart after a stroke.
He does look a little crooked. He looks a little crooked.
I am allowed to say that he looks very crooked as a very crooked man myself.
Yeah, he's pretty crooked. He's evil. So we don't, he's evil. But he goes on tour of Korea, and he says the KDP, right, they are holding the active membership or tacit support of the large majority of the administrative officials of the interim government. And this is the party of the land-owning community, remember this, which was led by Kim Seong-soo, which is one of the largest landowners in the southwest part of the country. So he's like, all right, I'm touring, I'm looking around. He's making notes. And he's like, the interim government, that's the USA's guys who are super, super right wing, all of them are going for the KDP. And the KDP is landlord class. And like, that's who we're going to go all in on, basically. And so there's other observations at the time from the West as well about what's going on there. So we have a Yale anthropologist named Cornelius Osgood who wrote to Army Secretary William Draper to talk about what was going on in South Korea in the late 1947-ish months and remarked that there was a patriotic aura surrounding the leftists and the communists. And he said that what the United States says they want to do and what the USSR actually did with reforming land and labor conditions in the North, they say that they're actually pretty similar. But he said a hated group is taking advantage of the military government in the South with self-interest characteristics of a lot of politicians that we've encountered before. So he also says that they learned an added cunning developed by subservience under the Japanese that make them basically harder to work with. So he gets there and he's like, well, really, what the United States is saying we want to do isn't that different from what the people of the North are actually doing. I don't know if that's true or not. I would say that's debatable. But he's kind of like, the reason why we're running into all these problems isn't necessarily our policies. It's that we've gone all in on a hated group of people who were really, really good at working the system of foreign occupation.
And who have developed sort of duplicity as a means of survival.
Yes.
And as a consequence of which, it sounds like what he's saying is they're doing graft.
Yes. So he's like, the people we're going all in on, they know how to work this system of colonial occupation because they did it under Japan.
And they're doing graft.
Yeah. So we're getting worked here. And also he's like, I don't even like we're not even the problem, really. It's these like sketchy landlords. That's who everybody in Korea hates because we're like basically the same as USSR. I don't think that is very true.
Did I not say that had they just gotten like one hot guy?
You're right. You are right. They might have pulled it off better.
I think that they and they could have even called it communism, right? And just like done what they were gonna do anyway. But it's been like, yeah, man, it's like totally socialism.
You're gonna let it.
Oh,
yes.
Socialism with like market characteristics. In fact, only market characteristics.
That's the market.
Just the market
is the market. Yeah. Yeah. So what he was talking about had some basis in reality, even if his assessment of the United States and the Soviet Union basically wanted to do the same thing was probably off base. What he was really noticing is that most Korean people in the South, especially outside of Seoul, wouldn't have seen the Americans directly. Instead, who they saw were the local elite class of Koreans, who were often the same people who were the local elite class of Koreans during colonial rule under Japan. And that is what they would get upset at. So there is some basis for his understanding of what's going on, even though it doesn't paint the full picture. So when he's like, they don't even really hate us. It's like, well, then they do hate you. They definitely hate you. But also, it is true that the people they are seeing every single day and engaging with aren't the Americans. They're the people hired by the Americans to do their bidding. So he points out that what most Koreans care about is just reunification. And he's like, look, they're never going to support a separatist policy.
Yeah.
So we got these people they hate. They're doing our bidding for us, and they don't like looking at them. They don't like seeing them. And the only thing they care about is reunifying their country. These people do not want this to be a separate country, and they're never going to be okay with it.
Yeah.
So December 1947, General Hodge writes a letter about the Americans' political dilemma in Korea, right? So he writes back to the U.S., and he's like, oh, this is bad. And Cummings talks about this and says that the situation in Korea is really the unhappy poles of supporting people whose one virtue was anti-communism and opposing native leftists, while hoping for a liberal outcome for which Korean society had no base. So he's like, okay, so you've got the political dilemma for you in the South is you basically are supporting people who violently hate communism. Who cares anything else about them? Maybe they're grifters, maybe they're weirdos, but they hate communism. But then you're also hoping for an outcome that's like this liberal progressive thing that those people don't exist in Korea, either in a position of power and leadership or in a position of an electorate.
Just at all.
Don't exist there.
It's like
you get fascist or communist, pick one. That's it. The liberals don't exist.
This is like when I always think about the I think it's Perry Anderson Bennett. It's one of the Anderson brothers. It's like the nationalism needs a library, a newspaper, and a currency thing, right? Where it's like you do actually need to build like an internal middle class that is all reading the same shit, using the same money, and like,
Yes.
right, like
has something
like
to say.
has like investment in like the institutions of civil society, and it's like
They just don't have that.
but it's like I guess you can't really build that artificially. You do have to like, it just does have to kind of happen.
Right. So what Hodge really mentions in this letter is explicitly that you have anti-communists who, let's be real, will just turn into fascists at the first opportunity. And you don't have any liberals. So what do you have? And you have a bunch of communists who hate us and want us gone.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the quote from the letter. We always have the danger of fascism taking over when you try to fight communism. It is a very difficult political situation that we run into. Germany was built up by Hitler to fight communism, and it went to Nazism. Spain, the same thing. On the other hand, when communism builds up, democracy is crushed and the nation goes communist. Now, what is the answer on the thing? How in the dickens are you going to get political in the middle of the road out of this mess? Just bringing it up for discussion. I don't know the answer. I wish I did.
So I actually feel kind of bad for Hodge here.
Do you?
Well, because it's like, right, like, he's kind of dumb.
Yeah,
right?
super dumb.
Because, like, everyone is like, yeah, like, we understand the fascism thing, that we're good with that. That's fine.
Right.
Like...
Yeah, everyone's like, yeah, we don't care about that. Why are you so upset about this? Yeah.
But it's like, he is the person who, like, actually believed, like, the myth of, like, America in World War II.
That's actually maybe true, yeah.
And was just like, we are actually trying to spread liberal democracy, like, and like, you know, say what you will, there is like a coherent, internally consistent ideological position that is liberal democracy.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, it does have a foundational base.
And like it
philosophically, economically, politically.
It kind of makes sense. Like you can like, it is convincing to read. Like there's people don't believe it just because I don't know, they're stupid. It is a convincing doctrine that made sense for, like, even Marx understood that was like, it lifted many people out of like a feudal system. And Hodge is just sitting there being like, why are we not doing the thing that we keep saying we're trying to do in the world?
Yeah, but also he's like, we can't.
Yeah, it's like he sees the conditions and it's like, take one more step, buddy.
Yeah.
Take one more step.
Mm-hmm. So, 1948 comes around. And we have one document from the CIA that really sets the stage for what's happening in South Korea for 1948. So, in one 1948 document, CIA analysts wrote that South Korean political life was, quote, dominated by a rivalry between rightists and the remnants of the left-wing People's Committees. Because remember, the left-wing People's Committees have been largely destroyed, which the CIA termed a, quote, grassroots independent movement, which found expression in the establishment of the People's Committees throughout Korea in August of 1945, led by the communists who based their right to rule on the resistance to the Japanese. So this document goes on and says, the leadership of the right, on the other hand, is provided by that numerically small class which virtually monopolizes the wealth and education of the country. Since this class could not have acquired and maintained its favored position under Japanese rule without a certain minimum of collaboration, it has experienced difficulty in finding acceptable candidates for political office and has been forced to support imported expatriate politicians such as Ri Syngman and Kim Koo. Now, what are they saying? Anybody that the United States tried to take from this right-wing political class of former landlords and was like, hey, South Koreans, vote for this person, support this person, South Koreans would not do it because they all had been Japanese collaborators. Mm-hmm. So that's why the United States brought in Syngman Rhee, who was technically Korean, but had spent most of his life living in the United States. He was more of an American to them.
I really love that you're just, like, you, like, the line you can be, he's technically Korean.
But the Korean,
yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
which is like
an outsider.
They're like,
he's ethnically Korean, but he's not nationally Korean.
Yeah.
You know, and they know this. So the document says these, while they have no pro-Japanese taint, are essentially demagogues bent on autocratic rule. Thus, the extreme rightists control the overt political structure in the U.S. zone, mainly through the agency of the National Police, which had been ruthlessly brutal in suppressing disorder. The CIA went on to say the enforced alliance of the police with the right has been reflected in the cooperation of the police with right youth groups for the purpose of completely suppressing leftist activity. This alignment has had the effect of forcing the left to operate as an underground organization since it could not effectively compete in a paramilitary sense, even if it had the desire to do so. Meanwhile, according to the CIA, the structure of Southern bureaucracy was, quote, substantially the old Japanese machinery. Okay, so what does this mean? What's going on in the South? Just to recap, basically, by 1948, the right-wing, U.S.-backed military dictatorship government of South Korea has forced everybody with left-wing politics to go underground. They've arrested so many of them. They've killed so many of them. The People's Committees have been forcefully disbanded. Communists are operating in secrecy. And the basically functioning quote-unquote government of South Korea is still the same old Japanese imperial model. In the North, again, could not be further from the truth. Just everything in the South is getting worse and worse and worse. Everything in the North is getting better and better and better. And in 1948, one of the big things they undertake is the formation of a children's league for kids between 10 to 15 years old, and it has a membership of 660,000 children in it.
Indoctrination.
Yeah. They work under the guidance from the Youth League, who's not beating random people up like they are in the South, the youth.
They're not cool.
Okay, now they're teaching people how to read and building a functioning revolution.
Like nerds.
Like nerds.
Yeah.
Child care centers get set up for infants between the ages of 1 month to 3 years. And they didn't have a lot of opportunity for these at first. In 1946, there was just one child care center and 64 kindergartens in the city center. But by 1948, there was this child care center in Pyongyang called the 3.8, which had been named after the March 8th International Women's Day, which is very, very cute and sweet. And they had the capacity for 50 infants between the ages of 8 months to 3 years. It had a playroom, a bedroom, a cafeteria, a bathroom. It provided meals and snacks throughout the day. So regardless of how many children were left at the center, a mother would just pay 10% of her wages for the service for as many kids as you had. So these really started to pick up steam in 1948. So in February 1948 as well, North Korea is really asserting itself as its own independent kind of country. Like when Cummings talks about it, he says, North Korea was never simply a Soviet satellite in the 1940s. It evolved from a coalition regime based on widespread people's committees from 1945 to 1946 to one under relative Soviet dominance in 1947 and 1948, then to 1949 to one with important links to China, which in turn enabled the demarcated maneuver between the two communist giants, like Russia and China, right? Kim Il-sung was not a hand-picked Soviet puppet, though. He was a person who maneuvered politically first to establish leadership, then to defeat anybody who had come up kind of against him, right?
Mm-hmm. He's a savvy politician.
He's a savvy politician, exactly. Then he allied with some Koreans who liked what the USSR had going on. He was like, we could do this too. But by 1948, February, he had really focused on trying to build a powerful army under his leadership. He was an army guy. That's what he was always the best at. And so Cummings writes to this and says that in February 1948, this powerful army that Kim Il-sung had created under his leadership melded Koreans who had fought together in Manchuria and China with the Korean army men who had stayed at home. And while Cummings discusses Kim Il-sung really focusing on this period and building up the military, meanwhile, the rest of the people in North Korea are doing all of these things that we've mentioned, setting up the literacy program, setting up the kindergartens and the preschools. They also are developing these massive study groups. Everyone's getting very, very educated on theory and on policy. And the February 1948 curriculum for the Inje County People's Committees, we actually have what they were learning at this time. So it covered a broad range of topics from contemporary history to practical administrative matters. And this would be what a traditional kind of study guide would look like, okay? So it'd be 4 hours of learning about the basic stages of development of human society, 4 hours on learning about the enactment of the Provisional Constitution, they're like contemporary history, 5 hours on the historical significance of the North Korean democratic reforms, 2 hours on the People's Committees and the People's Assembly and how it worked, 3 hours on the international and domestic conditions, 3 hours on how the Democratic Publicity Hall should be used, the organizing spaces they created, 1 hour on the Nam Township Irrigation Project and the electrical facilities.
Oh my God, this is the most boring school I've ever.
And 5 hours of practical work for a total study period of 27 hours.
So this is like a week?
This
is a week?
Yeah, this is what they're going to do.
I'm just going to throw this out there.
Yeah.
It's 1 hour on the irrigation system.
Uh-huh. You think more?
I think maybe less.
Oh, really? You don't think they did a full hour? Well, remember, though, when the United States divided them in half, they didn't leave them with farmland.
Oh, yeah.
So irrigation is literally the life.
I understand.
Yeah.
Like, I just love the idea that they're just like, all right, you have to fucking learn about the fucking irrigation system. And there's like some guy, you know how people have like, I can't remember what the like math dyslexia is.
Oh, yeah. Dysnumeria or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the person who has like no mind for engineering is just sitting there being like, oh, guys, like, what the fuck are you? We have to learn about irrigation projects in order to be like in the state.
I would love that.
Sucks.
They also, that was just the basic classes. If you were a more advanced student, you would also learn about Marxist-Leninist theory and Bolshevik history. But the baseline, those 27 hours, it would actually not be a full week. You would do it in a week, but it would be 3 days. So it'd be 3-day courses, 9 hours of study per day. And usually these classes would be very, very well attended. They'd have 110 people in attendance. So very large.
Yeah.
So by March of 1948, 92% of the people who had been illiterate peasants in North Korea had learned to read and write. And this was about halfway through their 3-year literacy campaign. So pretty impressive. April 3rd, 1948, meanwhile, comes about in the South. And this is when we see more uprisings in Jeju. So this is in the Workers' Party of South Korea that we're really talking about, a communist party in South Korea. Remember, they'd been forced to kind of go underground. They'd been dealing with a lot of repression by the North. By the Americans. And they planned an uprising of about 350 armed men from Jeju. And these men attacked police stations throughout the island. So they had 2 goals with this uprising. They wanted to put a stop to the violent attacks of these right-wing militias that had been just terrorizing the people of South Korea. And they also wanted to protest the upcoming presidential election that the Americans had scheduled for May of that year. So this election would form a government for the U.S.-controlled southern half of the country, but it would also solidify the partition of Korea into the north and south, like formally. And this was against the wishes of the Korean people. They thought that this division was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, and they still didn't like it when it was temporary. But the idea that now they were just supposed to elect their own government under the United States guidance, they knew this meant they were never getting their whole country back, and they were not happy about it. So they were resisting the elections. They were resisting the control of the U.S. military government. They were resisting the formal solidification of this into 2 different areas. So this armed resistance group, the People's Liberation Army, was sometimes also called the Mountain People. And they distributed leaflets to local policemen and citizens, letting them know about what would be happening with the uprising and what their goals were. So the leaflets said, "Dear citizens, parents, brothers, and sisters, today on April 3rd, your sons and brothers have stood up with arms in hand. We oppose the country selling separate elections to the death and have risen up in order to liberate the people, unify the fatherland, and achieve independence." The leaflet distributed to policemen included the same themes, uprising against oppression, coupled with support for national unification and anti-American struggle. So they were officially saying, we are not going to allow South Korea to be formed as a country. This uprising would kick off what would come to be 6 years of brutal massacre of the people of Jeju Island. So now we have a quote here about this from Gui Seok-won. "The precise number of individuals who were murdered or disappeared over the course of Jeju 4-3, that's the April 3rd movement, remains unknown. The death toll varies depending on the data source and ranges between 15,000 and 65,000. The population of the island at the time of the outbreak of Jeju 4-3 was approximately 280,000, which suggests that a substantial percentage of islanders were wiped out. Hundreds more were mentally and physically abused through torture and other violence. The Jeju April 3rd Incident Investigation Report of 2003 by the Jeju 4-3 National Committee reports that between 25 and 30,000 people on Jeju Island were killed over 6 years of the massacre, the majority of whom were unarmed civilians. In comparison, the number of soldiers and police officers who died were estimated to be between 162 to 289 people, respectively. This grim imbalance is indicative of a massive slaughter by any metric. The official number of victims now recognized by the state is roughly half of the total estimate. And just for reference, Gui Seok-won actually works on trying to uncover what happened. This is her. Yeah. So after a special act to investigate the truth of Jeju 4-3 was enacted in the year 2000, the Jeju 4-3 National Committee received reports on the victims from their families and identified a total of 14,442 victims as of December 2019. The category of victims included those who had died, disappeared, were disabled, or were imprisoned. This discrepancy between the estimated number and the officially registered number is largely due to the fact that by the time of the report, many families were dead or reticent to report victims among their family members out of fear that they and their children might be accused of being communists. The vast majority of the dead, 83.6%, were killed at the hands of state agents, such as the police, the military, and rightist groups. 16.4% were killed by the armed resistance group, who were local communist insurgents. So, in April of 1948, the military government in the South also authorized South Korean police to deputize local patriotic Koreans, who they called the Community Protective Association, to help the police to keep order. 8,479 people were arrested in connection with the February 7th, 1948 strike. And on March 12th, General Hodge ordered all radio receiving sets to be licensed and issued laws requiring that a gathering of more than 3 persons needed to have a police permit. All utterances critical of the military government, whether spoken or written, were forbidden. So it's not just Jeju Island that's dealing with us, right? May comes around, May 1948.
Okay, I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
Presumably, word is getting out that this is happening.
Yes.
Right at the time. Presumably, people in North Korea are hearing about it.
Yes.
Right. What is there like a response that's like, oh, fuck, we have to do something? That kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So the people who know the extent of what's going on in the South are very, very disturbed by it. Remember, some towns were split in half. So some people's family members are on the other side of this divide. Meanwhile, the division itself is getting increasingly militarized.
Mm-hmm.
So they know. So the general vibe in the North is that we need to expel the Americans and reunify our country.
So, right, like there is like a, like they're learning either by like hearsay or just like news, like, hey, there are widespread massacres that are killing like 15,000 people.
Yeah. Yes, they are learning about this. And that is also part of why they're increasing their military presence.
Gotcha.
So Kim Il-sung at this time, we'll talk about this more in the buildup, but is talking to the USSR and is like, we have to retake the country. This is wild, basically. When can I do it? And the USSR is telling Kim Il-sung, you cannot attack the Americans. Mm-hmm. It will start World War III. You have to wait until they attack you. So basically, if they attack you, we're justified in doing whatever we want.
Yeah.
But if you don't, they will use it as an opportunity to come down on us and like nuke us, basically. So like you can't.
Which is like probably true.
It is true, definitely. So this is really what's going on in the North.
Yeah.
They know, but they have to bide their time until the United States and the South, by proxy, does something so egregious they are justified in their attack.
And the USSR is not making public statements. Neither is like North Korea about what's happening.
But we know they're talking to each other.
Okay.
Yes, we have documentation of that. So the May 9th election comes around in South Korea. And the UN, which was dominated by the United States at the time, agreed to form a committee, which is a very unfortunate abbreviation. UNTCOC is what we call it.
I'm sorry.
UNTCOC.
Show me.
Here, it's pretty bad.
Why is
it's
it?
the United Nations Temporary Commission on Korea. UNTCOC. UNTCOC.
Okay.
UNTCOC, yeah.
You keep saying it.
UNTCOC. It's a great word. It's very satisfying.
Okay.
You have to try saying it.
UNTCOC.
It's fun.
Sure.
Yeah. So they are there, and they're supposed to observe the elections in Korea. And the members would include representatives of the Philippines as well as the nationalist China at the time, right? Chiang Kai-shek shit, who could be counted on basically to toe the American line, to be like, oh, let's see, everything's going great for the people, the Americans want it. And also, though, representatives from Australia and Canada. I feel like Australia is always showing up at the scene of the crime everywhere the United States is. But in the Korean War, we'll see Australia actually played a pretty big part.
Really?
Yeah. They're like us in this. Not as bad, not as much as us, but they really are like a big bad.
They are like the little guy who's next to the bully.
Yes,
like
yeah, and they're like kicking you while you're down. Exactly. So this is who showed up, and they're saying that Canada was more recalcitrant once they got the taste of South Korean politics. Came from allied governments subject to American influence and pressure. The North Koreans and the Soviets very obviously were not into UNTCOC, and they were like, we are not participating in anything the UN is overseeing. This is when the Soviet Union was like, you even overseeing these elections violates your charter. We know you're up to sketchy shit.
Yeah.
You're controlled by the Americans. You're up to sketchy shit. You're trying to steal South Korea. And they were correct. This is what happened. Most of the UNCOC members, though, to their credit, when they arrived in South Korea in early 1948, they were like, ugh, this is pretty sketchy. Like, you guys are, I don't even know how we can fake this kind of a vibe. They're like 12 of the 15 members of the National Election Committee are all close associates of Kim Song-soo. When new nominees are added to balance them off, they're always described as being very conservative or rightist to go along with it. So, like, this is like huge conflict of interest. The UNCOC observed elections did happen in May of 1948. And we have some documentation about this that says the U.S. basically held a separate election in the Southern Zone. Syngman Rhee was like, I'm really into this, actually. So some other political leaders were like, no, how dare you have your own election? Syngman Rhee was like, no, we need to have our own election, and I want to be the head of the new government that emerges from it, right? So Syngman Rhee was like, I don't want a united Korea, like, ever. Mm-hmm. And on election day, which was May 9th, right, they sent UN commission staff members, 30 of them, to observe an area of 40,000 square miles where 7 million people were living to vote. So this is, again, just they had 30 people to oversee the election results of 7 million.
So this is UNCOC?
UNCOC.
Yes. This is where this is the thing that is obviously springing to mind and why it's uncomfortable to say.
UNCOC, yeah. I didn't even think of that, but I like yeah.
But so that it's like not even effective, presumably.
No.
Right, like.
But the military government was trying to force everybody to vote. So they assigned the Community Protective Association this task of go make sure everybody votes. Now, this was a problem because in Jeju, turnout in 2 of their electoral districts didn't even meet the minimum voter threshold, so their votes were declared invalid. And this really pissed off authorities because they're like, now we have to do this again. We already are trying to steal 1 election. It's going to be way harder to steal 2. The following day, on May 10th, the U.S. military government dispatched Colonel Rothwell H. Brown to Jeju to oversee police and military operations top commander there. And when he got there, he said Jeju is, quote, a base for communists, in a letter he sent to his division leader. So he stationed battalions from the Korean constabulary.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to help you. I'm just going to let you rock.
Constabulary.
Keep going. Go on, do it.
What is it?
I think you got it right the first time, but
I don't know that I did.
I think that's about as good as we're getting. That's how I would say it.
Okay.
And I'm not like, I think that's like a very like British.
Constabulary.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was like stationing battalions, right, with American officers directing them on the front lines. And he was like, we are going to search all of Jeju Island and we are going to locate these specific 350 armed rebels. And what he does in this pursuit is he ends up arresting literally thousands of innocent villagers looking for these 350 guys. So protesters in Jeju hang up a flag representing their resistance. So this flag they hang up is called the People's Republic flag. And this does not go over well. More people start getting hunted and arrested for this. Gui Seok-won talks about this and says, there's only a few testimonies, right? But some insurgents appear to be very, very committed to this idea of the People's Republic. One woman leader recalled that fellow insurgents cried, hooray for the People's Republic 3 times as they were searched and shot dead in the mountains by counterinsurgents. One survivor remembered, quote, a young woman arrested by the police never asked for a quarter, and she said that I will shout hurrah for the People's Republic even if I died. And she actually did until she was shot. Another survivor also said that a woman activist cried, hooray for the People's Republic 3 times on a snowy day in Jocheon village before being executed by the counterinsurgents. The counterinsurgency forces, likewise, understood the implications of fighting for the People's Republic. In some cases, the members of the suppression forces demanded that the insurgents or ordinary civilians whom they had arrested shout hooray for the People's Republic before executing them. In other words, both the insurgents' commitment to the People's Republic and the counterinsurgency forces' weaponization of those politics contributed to the scale and character of the fighting. So, we've got another quote from Colonel Brown here, and he says, I am not interested in the cause of the uprising. My mission is to repress it. That's really what he comes in saying. So he said that probably around 80% of Jeju residents would be implicated in the communist protests, as he called them. So we say 80% of this island is communist.
So, at which point you do have to like question the use of the word uprising.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm sorry, or like even insurgent.
Yeah, it's like maybe you guys are the insurgents here.
I think like, yeah, like the rebels are the outsiders.
Right. The mainstream is like, get the fuck out of our country.
Yeah.
Right. 80% of them. So he's like, we got to get even stricter. So he's like, I've got a plan to squash this in 2 weeks.
More genocide. Yeah.
So to facilitate this, a large number of police officers and soldiers are dispatched from the mainland to Jeju Island. The number of police officers increases from 500 at the time of the uprising to nearly 2,000 by July of 1948. The number of soldiers increases from 800 just before the outbreak of the uprising to 4,000 by June of 1948. Colonel Park Jin-gyong, a new regiment commander on Jeju, suggested that the entire Jeju people could be excluded from the boundary of the universe of obligation. As he stated in his inauguration, in order to suppress a riot, it is fine if 300,000 Jeju people are victimized. Following Brown's direction, Colonel Park indeed executed an operation to search the whole area of mountain villages from the east to the west to identify all of the local leftists. The number of arrested alleged communists reached 6,000 in 1 month. Most of those arrested were unarmed civilians and, in particular, young men. So, June of 1948, R.S. Millward, who was a British Foreign Office observer, said that in the mid-1948 time, that Koreans in the north, as this was going on in the south, were actually getting a good deal of battle experience in China. So they're building up a military prowess in the north that we will see they later very rationally want to use to liberate the people in the south who are being subjected to this horrible treatment by the hands of the occupying force.
I take it that doesn't go well.
Well, it's what ends up leading to the Korean War.
No, yes, I understand.
So 1948, August, this is when South Korea is officially supposed to transition out of the U.S. MGIK and into the ROK, the Republic of Korea, under this new elected leader who ends up being, of course, Syngman Rhee, who won the election. So one of the final acts of the military government under the United States in August of 1948, before turning over South Korea to Syngman Rhee, was to order the complete registration of anyone who had family in the North. And they placed penalties of up to 10 years for anybody who did not comply. And then on August 15th, the ROK, the Republic of Korea, is officially established. And nothing really changed with this handover. The formal transfer of power from the American military government to Rhee didn't really do anything. One American official assigned in Korea said military governors in the provinces were to be called civil affairs officers. The directors of the various national and provincial departments were called advisors, but the name doesn't make the article. In name, a Korean was, for instance, director of education in Gangwon province with an American as advisor. Actually, in 9 cases out of 10, the advisors ran the show, even to tacking their signatures onto every important document. So they were still a puppet government at the U.S., basically. Rhee's government also continued and intensified the policy of repression against anybody who was left in politics in South Korea, which was most people. There are statistics we have from the UN Commission on this issue. In the first 8 months of its existence, Rhee's government made 89,710 arrests. Again, this is 8 months. In 8 months, they arrested 90,000 people.
And presumably are doing what they have been doing all along, which is torturing and abusing them.
Yeah. Yes. Similarly, the following month, September 9th, Kim Il-sung officially becomes the head of their new government, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So the political structure of the North is widely misunderstood, as we've talked about. Cummings writes and says, few people knew anything about North Korea, but generally assumed it was a typical Soviet satellite, a people's democracy in quotes like those in Eastern Europe. The Red Army occupied the territory, rode herd on the emergence of a socialist state with a planned economy, and installed Kim Il-sung as its hand-picked puppet. What else could it be? Recent studies based on a treasure trove of documents seized when the UN forces occupied North Korea, however, support different interpretations, which we can summarize as follows. First, North Korea evolved an indigenous political system in the late 1940s, and its basic structure has never changed substantially. So that in the fundamentals, what you see in 1949 or 1950 is what you get in the 1990s, and arguably today. They haven't changed that much. Second, the closest comparisons to North Korea were Romania and Yugoslavia, not the states under complete Soviet hegemony such as East Germany. Third, Soviet influence competed with Chinese influence, and both conflicted with indigenous political forms and practices. The DPRK was and is a divergent case among post-war Marxist-Leninist systems, representing a profound reassertion of native Korean political practice, from the superordinate role of the leader to his self-reliant ideology to the hermit kingdom, quote-unquote, foreign policy. So really what we see here is that most people don't understand what's going on in North Korea. I think the most important thing to take from all of this is the use of the word native. This really was a government of the Korean people as they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We also have an autobiography of a North Korean at this time. It's in Susie Kim's book, so we've read this before. But she says, in September of 1948, some 3 years after liberation, a poor peasant named So Young-jun from the Soncho County in North Pyongyang province writes a short autobiography attached to his resume as required for his admission into the Youth League. The full text read, "As a poor peasant family since before my grandparents, we lived as tenant farmers."
Sorry.
David's dropping everything. Dropped a table on fork. She ran away.
I felt bad.
Your phone then made a ding-dong noise.
I'm looking up things for the Patreon episode.
Okay, that's good to know, yeah. And you dropped your phone.
Yes.
Oh, that's how it goes. We're Lucy.
Okay.
So he says his family were poor peasants. His grandparents were also foreign peasants. He said, "We lived as tenant farmers to Mr. Kim Un-poo and So Kwang-dong for 13 revolutions in the everyday, 17 years. And in 1925, lived as Mr. Pak Pyong-up's farmhand in So Kwang-dong, not only oppressed and exploited, but also bitterly suffering a wretched life. Not able to go to school, caring for my younger siblings until I was 12, and then in order to support my siblings, I started farming at 13 until liberation, when we were allotted land and I was able to farm freely and live a life of freedom. Before liberation, I couldn't even read. But after liberation in 1946, I started attending Korean school until 1947, learning to read and participate in organizational life and beginning a collective life, joining the Youth League on May 26, 1946, and the Peasant League on February 10, 1946. And then I took charge of physical education for the Youth League in our village, training the league members every morning and having fun with this work. And then I wanted to have an organizational life and joined the Workers' Party in January 1947, beginning my organizational life and taking charge of the party cell on January 6, 1948, and carrying on the cell life to this day. So this is an example of what kind of opportunities were being granted to the average person in North Korea. Now, I'm just saying, regardless of your politics, if you look what was going on for the average person living in North Korea versus South Korea at this time,
you're like,
come on,
right? It's obvious.
Yeah, it's
the thing,
obvious.
Who was the quote that was like the superordinate role of the political leader and the Hermetic Kingdom?
That was Bruce Cummings.
That's Bruce Cummings. That's human.
Yeah,
and it does seem like, so like, it sounds like what Human is saying
Thank you.
is essentially that, right, as opposed to most readings of North Korea as like a puppet state of like the Soviet Union or whatever, there are influences from the Soviet Union as well as from the Chinese government, but the principal thing is the reassertion of indigenous models of government, and like, which meant like when I heard like the superordinate sort of political leader thing, where it's like, so it's like there's a very hierarchical structure to leadership, including a government with a parliament and everything, but there's a hierarchical system, and like a relationship to the outside world that is very sort of like, fuck you guys, like we're doing our own thing a little bit,
but we see that that's actually kind of misrepresented, and we'll see it's more imposed by the outside world.
Yeah, or okay, there's an emphasis on self-reliance, let's say.
There is, but so when we use the term hermit kingdom, it's often used in like parody, I guess, by like, Cummings and things like that.
Yeah,
that's how they're thought of. But they're thought of as a hermit kingdom, but they're not a kingdom, and they're not actually that closed off from the world.
Okay,
they've been shut out from.
They've been shut out.
Right.
But it does seem like, right, his like assertion, like the reassertion of like native or like indigenous political structures seems like a better, it really does seem like Occam's razor on like dealing, like trying to think about North Korea, because I have maintained for a long time that your average person in the world who is not North Korean or like a political person should not be that concerned about North Korea.
Right.
Just like as a general rule.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, if you know something about it, know that they're fine.
Yeah.
And then, like, you probably have, like, bigger fish to fry in your life, like the fish you want to fry.
The most you should be doing is calling to end the UN blockade against them.
Yeah, but
let them just do their thing.
Yeah, but, like, if you were just, like, a normal, because, like, I'm just going to say, calling to end the blockade doesn't actually, like, there's not like a lot of political.
Yeah, there's not. There's really not. No, that's true.
And so it seems like, okay, just like kind of let them rock.
Yeah, let them do their thing. Yeah, totally. Okay. No, exactly. The problem comes with when you assume you know things about them and everything you know are these like cartoonish caricatures of them as big, bad, evil villains, because that means that you're giving basically the U.S. government carte blanche to do whatever.
Well, no, I mean, and like...
So it's better to think nothing.
Yeah, that I legitimately think, but I think the Occam's razor thing comes in because it's like, in general, if you have to choose between like a labyrinthine and otiose political dictatorship that is Dr. Evil style trying to rule the world, and like a country that reverted to like pre-colonial political structures influenced by Marxist-Leninism.
Yeah.
Right.
Indigenous communism, if you will.
Right. Yeah. You are probably like, that's like just like the simpler explanation.
Right.
That,
this is just Korean people doing a government they wanted that never got a chance to be in charge of themselves because of colonization. Yep. So we also have some more info that gives us insight into the life of the people's committees there, like what's kind of going on in North Korea at this time. So the duties normally performed by the local people's committees in North Korea during 1948, the protection of citizens' rights, including their right to property, protection of national property in its jurisdiction, maintenance of social order, guaranteed implementation of laws, edicts, decisions, orders decreed by higher organs, revitalization and development of local industries, revitalization and development of local transportation, construction and repair of roads, formation and implementation of the local budget and the collection of taxes, direction of educational and cultural programs, organization of hospitals for healthcare, medical assistance for people, direction of other healthcare programs, formulation and implementation of plans for city rural development, direction of housing construction, waterworks facilities and sanitation projects, investigation of arable land and indirection with irrational usage, collection of agriculture, tax in kind, and establishment of a strategy for natural disasters and infectious disease.
Okay.
So 1948, October. Radical activists in South Korea have not been stamped out.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they develop a guerrilla resistance army fighting against the Americans that are still there and the new Syngman Rhee American puppet government. So Americans like to claim that a lot of what they experienced starting now leading up to the Korean War was the result of saboteurs from the North. But historians say that nearly all of the dissidents and guerrillas were Southerners who were upset about Southern policies. The strength of the left wing that still existed despite being subjected to brutal terror campaigns and outright genocide was in southwest Cholas, which had historically been pretty rebellious by the Americans' standards, and in the southeastern Gyeongsang provinces, which had felt Japanese colonialism the most. So this month, saw a major uprising that started at the port of Yosu. And a lot of the unhappiness that came around with this major uprising in this port came from the unresolved land problem. Conservative kind of elements that owned a bunch of land that had been working under the Japanese before used their bureaucratic power to block any redistribution of land to peasant tenants who had advocated for it or voted for it or fought for it. Syngman Rhee at this time had only been president for a few months, right? He was the first president of South Korea officially, and he was backed by the U.S. He had signed off on a scorched earth policy to just totally get rid of all of the communist agitators in South Korea, right? But this especially meant on Jeju Island. So Rhee said that to stop this uprising, this guerrilla resistance army, everything, that the police and the military were to burn everything more than 5 kilometers from the coastline, and this resulted in tens of thousands of thatched roof houses going up in flames in South Korea. Resistance fighters were still being arrested and disappeared. Paramilitaries poured onto Jeju Island on Rhee's orders. They slaughtered the villagers indiscriminately. They carried out mass executions, and bodies were plunged into the sea and washed away, which is part of the reason why they're having such a hard time figuring out how many people died in this genocide that went on Jeju Island. They found many, many bodies on the airport land, but many people were thrown into the ocean and were never found or located. One man named Hyeon Soo-un says his uncle was arrested somewhere in the mountains of Jeju and found guilty of rebellion. He was transported to a prison in Mokpo, a city on the southern tip of mainland Korea, to serve a 15-year sentence, and he just never returned. So some people are like, I don't even know what happened to my family members. 29 other islanders had similar situations. They were getting jointly retried along with Heelan's uncle. 6 of them had been convicted of rebellion. The rest had been found guilty of espionage or collaboration with the enemy, and all were just lost, and they were presumed dead. An informal practice also went on of guilt by association at the time. It was called Yon Juaje, and it punished the relatives of people convicted. This was not explicitly outlawed until 1980. So the only way that people could keep their family safe was to be completely silent. Now, again, this is a huge stereotype about the North. Like 3 generations of family punishment. There's not really evidence that that's a thing in the North, but there is a lot of evidence that that is a thing in the South and was a thing up until the year 1980. The implementation of the new official governments of North and South Korea as well was not going well. By October of 1948, this foundation of separate states in the North and the South led to really, really heightened tensions along the 38th parallel. North Korea responded by building up what it called its 38 Guard units and self-defense forces because they were worried that the South was going to try to take them over. And the South had been doing mini incursions against the North Koreans along the border, but nothing super, super large enough to be like an issue. It'd be like the way when I read them, I hear about them and like feel them is like imagine 2 people on the other side of a divide going, hey, fuck you. And then one day one of them goes over and beats you up and steals your bread and goes back to his little booth.
Okay.
It'd been a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so they're not like trying to like carve out pieces of north of the
No, but tensions are high, everyone's armed, and they're looking at each other across the parallel, and they're really freaked out, basically. So November 1948, guerrilla warfare in the South picks up a lot of steam. More than 1,000 rebels flee to the mountains in the South Chola province, and they join up with a bunch of guerrillas and bandits that were already there in the hills.
Mm-hmm. Are these bandits, by the way, at all? Okay, bandits. Weird word. Rebels, freedom fighters, whatever you would like to call them. Are they at all in contact either with like the Soviet Union, with China, or with North Korea at this point?
We don't really have any info about this since these people were largely very secretive, you know? So I'd imagine some of them definitely would know. Because they didn't really have mass like restriction of movement.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a question of like, where would they be getting weapons?
Right.
Things like that.
Right, exactly, yeah. So December 1948, by the time the year comes to an end, in the North, in Inje County, there were 85 publicity halls, a theater, a library, 2 medical clinics, 25 elementary schools, over 100 teachers, 6,000 students, 3 middle schools,
100 teachers, so 6,000 students. That fucking that teacher to student ratio is all fucked up.
Yeah, 22 teachers in the middle schools with 600 students.
What's that?
22 teachers in the middle schools with 600 students.
Okay.
100 teachers in the elementary schools with 6,000 students. And then they had, imagine the teachers are probably teaching more than one class. They're most usually in a morning class and an afternoon class.
No, I understand that. That's still a...
Okay.
That's quite the ratio.
Well, if you want to go back in time to December 1948...
And lecture them...
more teachers.
And just... No,
Let them know. You think this is a bad ratio.
I just want to look down my nose and be like... This is not good practice.
Yeah, admonish the Korean people for their schools they just built.
Yes.
After not having access to for years of their lives.
This is why all of the communist leaders throughout history would hate me.
I mean, maybe. Yeah. They also had a high school, an adult middle school, 9 adult schools in general, 191 short course adult schools, 5,000 students in those. Primary school enrollment was around 50% by the end of colonial rule. But now they had increased that 204%. And now there were 1.3 million children of peasant families enrolled in schools throughout the North. And remember, the North had not been very populous. A financial report for Inje in 1948 showed that more than half of the country's expenses were spent on social and cultural projects, most of which went to education. So the year comes to an end. They're like, we're teaching people, yay. And in the South, things are, again, the opposite of this. Mass killings in Jeju reach a high point. Court-martial trials start charging islanders with rebellion, and the killings that follow this would remain buried for years, as we talked about. It took until, with the 2000s to really start addressing this stuff. So Busapan writes about this and says, If humans were displaced, so was the history of this atrocity. For most of the post-war period, the Jeju massacre was kept hidden from public through anti-communist propaganda that legitimated the suppression of communists on the basis of both the 1948 National Security Law and the Anti-Communism Law of 1961, which allowed the state to punish people who opposed its anti-communist policies. There was a large silence about this for many, many years, and the first person to break the silence in Korea about this was actually in 1978. Early, and a publication of Hyung Ki-young's short story called Suni Samcheon and Changbai, a quarterly literary magazine that is still active today. The story follows a man who returns to his hometown to discover that his family's housekeeper, Suni, has taken her own life 30 years after being the sole survivor of the massacre in her village. The story is based on the history of Bukchon-ri, a village of about 300 that was razed by the military after armed rebels killed 2 soldiers. So the article says that Hyun had a disfigured fingernail, and he said that agents from the Korean Central Intelligence Agency appeared at his day job as a school teacher after the story was published in 1978 and detained him in a basement where they held him for 3 days, and an agent repeatedly struck his limbs with an aluminum bat. The beating left his fingernail permanently twisted to one side, and he was told to stop writing inflammatory stories. So the first person who broke the silence about this in 1978, that's what happened to them. Mm-hmm. So you can tell it took a long time for other people to talk about it after that. We have a formal academic uncovering of it. This is a quote from one of our source texts. It says, in the winter of 1998, Kim Jae-soon, then a researcher at the National Archives of Korea, spent his days rooting around in the archives unspooling rolls of microfilm. His job was to find noteworthy but overlooked events that could shore up support for passing the Public Records Management Act, which would mandate the preservation of records created by public institutions and prohibit their willful destruction or suppression. The need for such a law had come to light in a scandal during the previous year's presidential election when rafts of documents were spirited away. Because the president-elect, then dissident-turned-politician Kim Dae-jung, had slipped in a promise to investigate what had happened on Jeju as one of his 170 campaign pledges, Kim Jae-soon turned his attention to the massacres and combed relevant files. Kim Jae-soon happened upon a curious list of names and verdicts that had been scanned onto microfilm. The names were jotted in slapdash handwriting, and the sentences ranged from 1 year to life in prison, and in some cases, death. Kim recalled they had stood trial by the hundreds, each unfolding in a matter of not even days but hours. Unable to find the corresponding judgments, he was convinced they were arbitrary executions of civilians rather than legitimate trials. At first, Kim could not tell his colleagues. Leftist incidents were taboo for civil servants to discuss, he said. For decades, those accused of harboring communist sympathies had been met not just with mockery and ostracism, but with government interrogation. There was an unspoken rule of avoiding public discussions of disputed historical events, especially when they involved communist associations. And remember, this was 1998. So in 1998, he was afraid to tell people he uncovered something bad that was done to people in the name of anti-communism. But instead of burying his discovery in safe, stony silence, Kim made photocopies of the microfilm and studied the massacres for months, calling up every reporter and scholar he could find with expertise on the events. Nearly a year after finding the microfilm, Kim knocked on the office door of Assembly member Chu Mi-ae, a former judge and freshman legislator in the Kim Dae-jung party, and shared with her what he had discovered. Now remember, Kim Dae-jung was like an opposition party candidate. So 2 days later, they traveled to Busan, a port city where the ledger had been kept in a branch facility of the National Archives since the 1970s, when it had been transferred from the Jeju District Prosecutor's office. Sandwiched between other court judgments was the list Kim had reproduced on microfilm. Its yellowing pages were dense, with 1,650 names in handwritten ink script, noting their age, occupation, home address, sentence, and assigned prison. These lists were interspersed with brief summaries of the trials scribbled on loose-leaf notes. Another ledger brought the total up to 2,530. First held in December 1948, these court-martial trials had been carried out under martial law. The islanders were charged with rebellion. The charges on the second run of trials, which took place in the summer of 1949, were collaboration with the enemy and espionage, and criminal violation of 2 provisions of the National Security Act. The National Security Act, by the way, is still around to this day. It prohibits people in the South from saying a single nice word to the North. Where they'll be imprisoned. An elderly man was recently imprisoned for being too kind and talking about the North in a poem in South Korea. Mm-hmm. So it still exists and is still used.
What is the poem? I will look it up.
We're not allowed to look at the whole poem. I don't think they published it. But basically, he was like, if we reunified Korea, we could teach each other many things. The North could teach us basically how to have free housing. And that
Well,
would be nice.
presumably he wrote the poem and somebody read it.
Yeah.
So that
That we know what it was about, but I don't think they're allowed to reproduce it because it's a violation. There's a lot of censorship in South Korea.
No, I understand that.
Find it, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
What's the name of the guy?
If you just look up, I think he was like 68 years old. So if you look like elderly man in prison, South Korea poem, you'll find it pretty easily.
Keep going.
Okay. So martial law had been invoked for the first round of trials, but the legislation that allowed the government to proclaim martial law wasn't established until 1949. Likewise, the National Security Act, under which 1,659 of the descendants were tried, was enacted by the U.S. Army military government in Korea, which had ceased to be the official ruling body in August 1948, almost a year before the second series of trials took place. The law was later codified into South Korea's constitutional law in 1954. So the Americans were still there, basically, doing these massacres even when they weren't supposed to be in charge. Kim Yoon-hee, a Jeju native, has been compiling the testimonies of people who suffered in the Jeju genocide. Kim remembered that her high school history textbook had labeled the incident a riot. But when all of her friends said their villages were butchered by the military, not by rioters, she began to wonder if she had been lied to. So she started visiting village elders on Jeju Island under the guise of being a student compiling oral histories, sometimes with a secret voice recorder in her pocket. 4 out of 5 conversations would eventually lead to the massacre, she said. Through her inquiry, she learned the extent of the violence. Kim's village, Wuniri, was one of the few that had been set ablaze by armed rebels who targeted villages that cooperated with the police and the army. The police and the army were responsible for over 80% of the deaths and destruction on Jeju, according to figures from the Jeju 4-3 investigation report. Now remember, they said 86% of the deaths had come from the police and the army working on behalf of the Americans and the Syngnorri government. But there were some other people some other instances that were thought to be 60% the result of the communists, the insurgents. Well, what she describes here is that some villages who had cooperated with the police and army were targeted by the communists as collaborators. And those are the people who died in those fights.
All right, so to go...
Yeah?
You cannot find the poem. I can tell you the name of the poem.
What is it?
Means of Unification.
Okay.
And it described that fewer people would live in debt under conditions of unification, and it is by Lee Yoon-sup, which led to a 14-month sentence. Yeah. There you go. Okay.
So survivors of the massacre, again, which 86% were people killed by the police and the army, and it looks like 16% was people... I don't know how these numbers added up. Maybe I'm remembering them wrong, but we said them earlier. But roughly 16% was people fighting back against this. So most of the deaths were one way, and it was the deaths of innocent people convicted of being too far left-leaning. Survivors spoke of brutal rape and murder, torture during interrogations, macabre scenes of corpses piled up in public for incineration. Ko Sing-bong, who was 74 years old at the time of her testimony, recalled how an aunt and 2 nephews were speared to death. Her aunt was pregnant, and when the spear was retracted, her unborn child was torn out, impaled. I buried the 4 of them side by side, Ko said. Her husband was captured and sent to a prison in Daejeon, but he might have been thrown into the sea. The trauma that haunted survivors led to more suffering. Ko Min-ja spoke of her husband who was driven to suicide by the crushing weight of survivor's guilt. His whole family was killed before his eyes, she said in a testimony from 2004. More than 40,000 Jeju people fled to Japan to escape the killings. Imagine that. You hate the Japanese occupation. You have to go there to escape the killings. And by the end of the massacre, 91,732 people, almost half of those who had remained on Jeju, had become refugees, with 39,285 homes being completely destroyed. Some were completely wiped off the map of Jeju as the houses of the displaced residents were burned down and the survivors were scattered. So it's 134 dong is the unit of measurement, which is a subdivision of a village. Now, this gets us to 1949. We're at the 2-hour mark. Do we want to pick this up?
I think we'll pick this up next week.
And that will lead us into the actual start of the Korean War.
Cool.
We made it pretty far. We got through 2 years this time.
Oh my God, we're picking up the pace.
We really are picking up the pace. I'm proud of us.
And over on Patreon, I think we're about to do something about love. Bless you.
Thank you.
Love and Deep Space.
Yes.
A Chinese gacha mobile game.
We are going to do that over on our Patreon. So if you want to check that out, come join us at patreon.com/pickmeupi'mscared. If you don't, that is okay. We will be here next week carrying on with our documentation of the Korean War. If you also are a person who likes YouTube, we've been trying to make our podcast more indexable and indexable.
That's not what that word means. That is a very special word that has
not indexical.
Oh,
I said
indexable.
I said indexable. Yeah.
Oh, I was like
not index. I know what you're doing with the indexical thing.
Yeah, that's a fucking rabbit hole.
No, I know there's a couple hundred of you that listen over on YouTube. Not a lot of people. Most of you are listening to regular podcast RSS feeds, but we have made it easier to use and sort through on our YouTube. If you would like to make that switch, Pick Me Up I'm Scared on YouTube as well. And we've been putting on the work in that. So you can join us there for free as well. Our Patreon is $2 or $3 a month, depending on what tier you end up getting. And yeah, we'll be back next week with more. Okay.